Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I want to do something, you may like, you may not like, but I'm going to give it a shot anyways, in that I am going to review my reviews in 2016. Meaning, I want to go back through some of my reviews, not all of them, thank God, we don't have time for that. But I want to go back through and take a look and see what, as I look at my reviews, makes sense to me still, where I've changed, where I've grown, what I still feel, what I feel less, etc. And just talk about some of the reviews where my feelings deserve some sort of comment. So what I did ahead of this video is just went through my big old picture of all of the reviews that I've had in 2016 and pulled out pictures of ones that represent those reviews in a meaningful way, that make me think about things that I feel like I've got something to say about. This is probably going to be a long video, so go on ahead and buckle in, so to speak, but hopefully it'll be interesting. If it is, let me know in the comments, but mostly I'll be honest here. This is for me, so I can grow as a reviewer and potentially as a human by looking at my own work here. And feel free to let me know well, let me know what I can learn in the comments. I'll take it from there, too. So, anyways, today we're going to review my reviewing, which is weirdly meta. Let's go ahead and jump into it here. And by the way, if you're looking for some semblance of order in the ordering here, you're not going to find all that much. It's kind of chronological. Some of the earliest stuff is early in the... But for the most part, it's just whatever made sense to me at the time, or fairly random. First off, this guy's the TSF Beast, Three Sisters Forge Beast. This was a nice knife in a lot of ways, but it was one of the very first knives that I handled that's exhibiting a pattern that's becoming pretty familiar to me, where the knife is fine as it ships, but it's just janky. There's something to it that needs adjustment, that needs constant fiddling to be just right. As opposed to knives like, one of the things, the very best things about the Chris Reeve knives, Shabazz, this is a large 21 by the way, going to be doing a review of it before too long, is that no matter what you do, no matter how you put it together, it's going to work just fine. This guy was the opposite. I've had some other knives that felt that way ever since that. Let's see here. The one of the big ones would be the Hinderer XM18. The Southern Grind Spider Monkey is really badly in that way. Some stuff from Real Steel. Some of those I haven't had yet, but nonetheless. This was one of the first knives that I handled that had that problem, where on any given day I wasn't 100% sure whether I trusted it was in good adjustment and good usefulness. And so that's something I've kind of learned to watch out for. Knives that are fine out of the box, but the moment you take them apart, or the moment things go a little out of whack, they go a little out of whack. And that's ugly. That's a different kind of ugly right there. That's right, this guy right here is the Graham Stubby Raisin. Pardon me. And this is an interesting... I like this knife a lot, but I think it was one of the very first knives that I kind of... This helped me to come to terms with the fact that a great knife is a beautiful thing, but it needs to be a knife first and foremost. And this knife was just too thick. For my use case, it was just too thick. It was not a good slicer, and so it found itself a new home about partway through the year. I've still got its big brother, absolutely 100%. I'm still very much in love, but the little guy was just too thick for its own good, and it's kind of... I learned a lot from this knife in that I realized I do require, for something to make sense in my life, a really good slicer. So there we go. This video, how can we forget this video? This was a video on inexpensive versus cheap, and it marks the very first appearance of our friend here, the Z Hunter. Sorry, it's got a little cord on it. It was a Christmas ornament briefly for the Instagram. But anyways, the Z Hunter has become... perhaps more than I should allow, a symbol of the channel, and I kind of love that in a lot of ways, because it helps me to keep the pretense down a little bit. And I've fallen in love with this knife, which I picked up to do this video exactly. But ever since then, I've liked this knife more and more. Not that it's a good knife, but just... And so I can't help but look at this video and smile, like, oh, Nick, you had no idea what a role this little Z Hunter was going to play in your life. Another knife, sorry, oh, the Z Hunter. Another knife that I still love, and I love even more than the day I got it, was the Chris Reeve Knives tie lock here. This is a knife that every time I carry it, I'm very, very happy about that simple fact. And once I put a better clip on there, it got even better still. This is still a great knife, still a knife I highly recommend, and one that each time I think to myself, Nick, you haven't carried that a lot lately. And then I carry it as like, oh, I should carry this more. It's just such a gem. Oh my God, it's a gem. Sorry about some of the zooming here. Some of them I don't actually have the original pictures I used for the video because I'm not a brilliant man. But anyways, this right here is the Spyderco Manix 2. I did a review of this guy some time back, and I am honestly not the best guy to review this knife because I don't do a lot of heavy-duty cutting. But this is one of the very best heavy-duty cutting sorts of knives out there, meaning cutting over and over again. Ergonomically, it's a gem. This is a knife that I respect a great deal, and I recommend regularly, even though it's not a knife that I had any temptation to keep around. And so it's kind of a nice reminder to me that not everybody's needs are the same as my needs, which is good, makes the world more interesting. But this is definitely one of those that I kind of look at and think, you know, I should probably own one of these just for completeness. But then I realize I own too many knives anyways. But still, great, and I like it even more after thinking about it in the past, after everything else I've handled. It's a gem. This right here, well, there is the Phoenix UC35. This is a USB charged flashlight. I've got a review of it up, and even though I've gotten much deeper into flashlights, and at any given moment I've got a bunch of different lights around, though light, yeah, this still has a place near and dear to my heart. The tint isn't great, sure. It's not the brightest thing. It's a little bigger. It's a little heavier than most, but it's still a great light, and it's a solid light. Keep one of these in the car. I travel with one of them because I can charge it on the go. It's a really, really spectacular thing, and it's a nice reminder that you don't have to be a flashlight snob. And this isn't that snobby, honestly. You don't have to be a serious flashlight snob in order to get a serious light. And so it's a boring tool, but I say that with all kinds of respect. I don't think much about it, but every time I need it, it's there. So I like that, and I still recommend this guy. Speaking of knives I recommend and like, this is the Spyderco PM2. This is a great knife. I've recommended it over and over again. It's not necessarily a knife I ever carry because it's a little bit big. It's a little bit... it's just a little much for me on a regular basis. I actually ended up selling mine to a buddy thinking, you know, I don't really ever carry it. And then I actually found a good deal on another one. This is in M4 steel. And so I picked one back up again. So this has the distinction of being a knife so nice I've bought it twice. And so I got to give it credit for that. These two videos on the ZTO 630, which was an Emison design, and the Casio CQC 6K, are, I don't know. I look back at these, and I'm of two minds. Emison's designs are very much not a Nick Shabazz sort of affair. They're designed to be weapons. They're designed to be tactical. They're designed to be, you know, everything that I really am not. The more I look at other knives, the more I can respect them. Not so much the Kershaw, because that was badly built, I maintain. But the ZT Emison is not a knife I like. It's not a knife I would carry or use or anything like that. However, it is a knife that I increasingly respect. And maybe I didn't give it enough respect in that initial review. You know, I'm not saying run out and buy one. It's definitely a tool for a specific task. But I don't know. Even though this ain't my use, and hopefully it never will be, it is still maybe a better tool than I gave it credit for. So I gotta say that. Eat some crow there. Let's move on. So the Casio Oceanus is an incredible wristwatch, absolutely 100%, and it's one of those watches that makes me wonder why I keep looking at other watches. I've got a full review up. I should probably do a follow-up, but it's just so damn good. It's radio-controlled, it's quartz, it's durable. I've worn the heck out of mine. Mine's got a nice big scratch up here now from something or another, but it's a great, great watch, and I like it, and I still wear it pretty regularly, even though I've got all kinds of other things. There's an Omega, Seamaster, Aquaterra, that, you know, I get to wear and play with. This still impresses me on a regular basis. And so, you know, it's an expensive watch, 100% at $500 for quartz, but it is so damn good that it makes me wonder, like I said, why I bother looking at other watches out there in the world. If somebody told me this is the last watch I could ever wear and I could get new ones, I could live with that. So I guess that's high praise, and I feel that even more strongly now. Chris Reeve knives, on. This is a knife that I can't quite get out of my head. I liked this knife a lot. It's very, very good. It's got a bunch of really nice aspects to it. The build quality, at least on the one I had, was perfect. And aside from a couple of ergonomic vowels, most specifically this little guy down here, I liked it a lot. And I have very regularly thought to myself, maybe I should pick up a Tanto version of this. Or maybe I should buy another Umnumzan. And I kind of know, I always temper it with the fact that I know that if I'm given the choice, I'm going to carry the gram above the Umnumzan every day of the week. But this is a knife that I've recommended a lot more than I thought I ever would. I like this knife a lot, even if it's not perfect, but it's built pretty much perfect. I don't know. I want to give some love to this knife because I don't know that I gave it enough love at the time. Maybe I did. I don't know. Spyderco Chaperone. This is an interesting knife for me as a reviewer. I gave this one a shining gem recommendation, and in many ways it is. But it has one Achilles heel, and that's this backlock here, which was just way too sharp and just made the knife a little bit unpleasant every time I tried to use it. It's great in a lot of ways, and it's a knife that I want to really, really love. But I ended up selling it, and I don't end up regretting it. I think it's still a very good choice, but in some ways, I wish that I had used the knife for a few more months before I filmed that initial review to realize that that little backlock thing, at least for me, was kind of a deal breaker. I did a follow-up on it, but still, I don't know, it's tough to really say. You never know when you're doing any kind of a review whether something that's a little bit annoying on day one is going to turn out to be fine after you get used to it, or it's going to turn out to be a complete deal breaker after a little while there. And I didn't make that call here. I didn't say that, and so I did the follow-up, but still. So I like this knife, and I still recommend it, but that thing may be a problem for you, and if day one it bugs you, it's probably going to bug you more on day 50, and you can probably leave it in the store. Little thing here. Sorry. This right here is a ZT0808. This is a knife I didn't really love in my review. I compared it kind of, I don't know, it's a very chubby ZT0450, but I find myself recommending this guy to people more often than you'd think. In many ways, it's a nice alternative in the murdery department to the 0450 and the 0452. It had a great action, and with the stock clip, that made it a lot better. But, so I don't recall giving this knife all that much in the way of love, but it is a great knife, and it is something that I like and that I'm recommending regularly, so it's something to keep in mind. Benchmade Valet. Speaking of knives I don't own, but I recommend a lot, this is a good one. This is the Shinola, whoa there, edition, but, this is a knife that is really solid. It's probably my favorite thing that Benchmade makes at this point in time. And, as much as I hate Benchmade's quality control right now, and as much as you need to go to a brick-and-mortar store to find a good one, it's an impressive little knife. And so very, very often when people mention little wood-handled gentleman's folder, I send them this way. You're going to overpay. That's the nature of the beast, but you're getting a lot for your money. And so if you haven't watched my review and then subsequent disassembly of this guy, you probably should. It's something you really should be considering. Next thing, the ZT0452. This knife made me learn a great deal about myself as a reviewer because on paper, this is a silly knife. Right here, this is, 4 inches of murdery glory, a 4.2, I don't even remember. But it's freaking huge, and, day one I got it, it bit me. This is me shaming the knife very early on. But anyways, I bought this knife expecting to make fun of it, and I fell in love, and this knife has lived on my review table ever since. I do not believe I have ever carried this outside the house because holy crap. However, the action on it is so good, and frankly, it's just such a well-designed piece that I feel like, even if it's not for me in any logical sense, I still like it a lot, and so I end up recommending it a lot, with the proviso that it's a murder weapon mostly, and, people keep loving it. So this is a knife that I almost didn't review, and I'm really glad that I took that chance, because I thought I was going to hate it. There are a couple other those out there in the world. The Spyderco Jr. is a sad story in many ways, because it actually suffered in many ways the same fate as the Spyderco Ouroboros here. Sorry about that. Weird angle to deploy at. But the Ouroboros and the Junior suffered from one big Achilles heel, and that was Teflon washers with a compression lock. To me, that combination is completely unacceptable, and that's why I've put phosphor bronze in my Ouroboros here, which improved it significantly. And it was also expensive. It was made in Japan. They're very, very similar. But seeing these two knives, seeing the Ouroboros and seeing that mistake repeated was almost more painful as a result of having worked with the Junior first. This is an interesting knife. I would honestly recommend the Ouroboros over the Junior, but both of them suffer that same fate, and that's sad in both cases. Oh, Spyderco Japan Factory, what are you doing? Kosha Cryo. I agonized long and hard. A spoiler alert for the Thrifty Thursdays finals there. The final competition for Thrifty Thursdays was between the Ontario Rat number 2 here and the Kershaw Cryo. I agonized long and hard about that decision, and I ultimately ended up going with the Rat number 2 here over the Cryo because the Rat 2 was a little bit more boring. It just felt like a more straightforward, easy to use, non-flashy sort of tool. And at the time, I remember wondering, did I make the right call there? And in retrospect, I have most certainly done so. The Rat 2 is a knife I have fallen more in love with over time. And the Cryo is a knife I ended up selling because I never ended up carrying it. And so I feel like I got this one right, particularly in that final competition, but it is still quite a nice knife. And it's interesting to see them kind of pulling apart in the final competition way after the races ended. I don't know. Interesting to me, at least. Next thing, this right here is the IGTAC D25C, which uses a CR123 battery. Reviewed this guy, loved it, called it a shining gem, sent everybody out to get one, and then like 2 weeks later, I found the D25A, which is the same light except using a AAA battery, and I like this even more, and I kind of feel bad about that one. There's no problem with it. They're both wonderful flashlights, but at some level, like, oh, this is great, you should get one. Oh, this is better. That was regrettable. I just hadn't tried this guy first, and so the A win. And in fact, the A is a light so nice I bought it twice. I ended up picking up the brand new 2016 edition with some specialized things with a D-domed LED in there, so you can see there's no little plasticky dome on there. But nonetheless, it just makes it a little brighter, a little warmer. It's a light I've fallen more in love with every day I carry it, and it's now, I would say, very readily my favorite light. It's edged out the competition, which is this guy, the RRT01, which is a great rotary light, but it's not as nice for EDC. So, still love this guy. Great light. Buck 110. This is a review that gets a lot of hate, because basically what I said about this is that it's a neat piece of history, and it's an interesting knife, and it's a fine tool, but it's way too heavy for everyday carry, and it's not all that practical, and it just doesn't make all that much sense in a modern context. A lot of people have hated on that, and, they're welcome too, but this highlights sort of a truth of my channel, which is that I evaluate every knife in terms of everyday carry. If a knife just doesn't make sense when you carry it, then it's not going to be something I recommend. No matter what's going on with it, no matter the history, the culture, any of that, that's cool. But at the end of the day, it needs to work well in my pocket for the kinds of tasks that I do. Given there are people with different tasks. There are people who, according to the comments, genuinely claim to everyday carry a cold steel Espada XL for self-defense. Enjoy the jury trial there, buddy, but whatever. This really... I've gotten a lot of hate on this guy, and also on this guy. This is the Ego no Kami, which is a traditional Japanese knife, and the one I got was a total piece of crap. But I have so many people on that video Googling and just hating and hating and hating. Oh, this is a cultural artifact. You can tell a lot of them are Japanophiles. They're really in love with the culture and the idea, and that, they're trying to make these arguments that, well, if you put some leather on the inside of it and then you put it in a leather sheath and then all of this, and, then it can be a kind of acceptable everyday carry knife. And I'm just like, buddy, this is a perfectly acceptable everyday carry knife right out of the box. And so I just these two knives reiterate for me that truth about what the channel is. I'm looking at knives and gear and lights and pens and whatnot for everyday carry. If you're looking for history, this is a great knife. It's a great cultural artifact. Maybe it's something that brings you joy if you really love Japan. But it's not the best thing to carry with you to open boxes and envelopes, and all the hate in the world on the channel isn't really going to change that fact. And so, for those of you who've hated on these decisions, I hate to say it, next year's not going to look a whole lot better. Sorry about that. Another knife that came from behind and surprised me is this little guy right here. This is the Spyderco UK PK, which is designed to get around UK laws. And I picked this guy up, like the ZT452 here, on a lock, as, somebody was sending me a bunch of other stuff. And I said, sure, throw the UK PK in there. I'll throw it in there. I'll make fun of UK knife laws and shed a tear for how bad their choices are. Turned out this is a great knife. This is a knife that I have a couple of times considered, like seeing, the titanium UK PKs on sale. So I'm like, oh, I should get one of those. It's really spectacular. And so had I just listened to my first instinct and said, oh, it's going to be a piece of crap, I would have been way wrong. And so this is one where even if I called it a gem in the end, I almost made a bad decision in skipping this guy over. So anyways, that's a little shock here. Let's move on. Spyderco Native 5. This is probably the best knife I don't own. And in fact, I've owned one twice now. I picked one up, and then I picked one up again. And each time, I've come to the exact same conclusion. This is an incredible knife. The second one I owned was an S110V. It's now gone off to my buddy Hovan. And it's a stellar knife. However, it's also redundant given some of the other things I carry. If I'm going to carry a random Spyderco, it's going to probably be the Delica, which is a little nicer to carry than this guy is, even though it's not as nice in the hand when you're using it. But I love this knife, and I recommend it so often and so highly. It's absolutely spectacular in the value, and so this is a really spectacular knife, and I don't know that I've given it enough credit in the channel here for being that. Like I said, probably the best knife I don't own, at least that I've reviewed. So, yeah, there you go. This is another really good contender for that title, actually, the ZT562CF. Another knife that I owned, that I loved, and that I've sold. Spectacular. I always kept getting booted out of the pocket by the Raisin for me and my personal collection, just because I've got a soft spot for this weird guy here. But I recommend this one all the damn time. It's one of the very best knives in that $200 to $300 bracket, between your Sleesh Bowie and some of your other options, the 452. It is a spectacular tool, absolutely 100%. It's not for every task, but it's for enough of them that it's pretty compelling. And so, I reviewed this guy, and I don't even know that I gave it a strong enough praise. There were a couple of little issues with it, but this guy, just on forums and whatnot, is one of the first to spring to mind when people want a good mid to high-end sort of knife. So really consider this guy if you haven't yet. Cold Steel Code 4. Cold Steel and I have a contentious relationship in that I think that they're, by and large, well, they're being bullies and a lot of the marketing's ugly and whatnot, but that's beside the point. This is a knife that I reviewed and I said was fine. And in many ways, I agree with that, but I'm realizing that there are a lot of knives out there in that category that they're not incredible knives. They're not like, oh my God, I want this knife. But they're still pretty solid, and I think this one kind of falls into that. I mean, it's not the knife I would choose any day of the week, but if it was the one I had in hand, I could be okay with that. And it's kind of hard for me. Sorry, the heat just kicked on. It's the middle of winter, actually. It's Christmas Day. Merry Christmas if you celebrate it. But anyways, this is one of those that I'm never quite sure what to do with. I don't love it. I don't hate it. It's got some weirdness. It's got some okay. It's fine. And those are still something I struggle with on a regular basis for the channel. I think I probably didn't give it enough credit, but at the same time, I don't want to give it too much credit because I don't want to distract people from other things that are really going to be better choices, like your Native, or, well, that's a much different price range. So, yeah, the Code 4 and the ones in that same vein are something I'm still struggling to figure out how to deal with. Knives that are solid, but not over the top. This is another category I'm struggling to deal with, and that's the really inexpensive Chinese knives. Things like your San Renmus, your Real Steels, your Gonzos, things like that. I'm going to be working with them a little bit more, but I struggle to figure out how much I value, for instance, having post-purchase support. On a $10 knife, it's not a thing. You know, you can buy another one for the price it would take to ship it back. But when you get into like a $50 or $60 real steel, or a Gonzo, I don't think Gonzo goes that high necessarily, those things start to add up. And that's something I'm still trying to figure out how I feel as a reviewer. And still trying to quantify. How do you deal with the simple fact that some of these knives are, well, you're kind of on your own with them. It's as is. It's weird. But anyways, so I don't know that I was entirely fair to this. This was a great knife in a lot of ways. Tipped out only, that was ugly. And I still maintain that this is awfully close to a Shabazz design. I mean, yeah. But at the same time, I don't know, I may not have given this guy enough credit. And especially given the price, it's okay. So I'm still working on how to handle those little things. How to look at those. Sin 104 wristwatch. This is the biggest bath I haven't regretted taking whatsoever. This was a great watch. It is a great watch. It's a great mechanical watch, though. And I realize increasingly that mechanicals just aren't for me, ever. And so I'm really glad that I bought this watch because it taught me that lesson. And, you know, yeah, I think I ended up losing like $200 on this guy, which wasn't ideal. However, it taught me a $200 lesson. That even on your high end, mechanical isn't necessarily going to be the best choice for me. So, yeah, I don't know. But I do like the watch a lot. There was a lot of good there. So the Doke, this is a nice knife. This one had some bad action issues. The reason it's in here is that this actually gets the prize for most gracious maker. Maybe 6 months after the review went up, Brad Southard went onto the channel, onto this video, and said, "Hey, Nick, you know, thanks for pointing that out. Next time, if you ever get one of those in the future like that, send it my way, you know, and tell the owner to get in touch with me. That action isn't okay. I don't know how it slipped out. Nobody tells me some of these things, and so, it's hard for me to find this out." It was one of the most, and I'm not directly quoting, you can go to the video and take a look there, but it was one of the most gracious responses I've had from the constructive criticism from makers. And that really impressed me, and it's made me want to check out some more of Southard's work. He did that right, and so I want to give him a shout out here, even if the knife itself, my opinion, hasn't particularly changed, although ideally with a better action could be much nicer. This video, I was just talking about this. Why quartz watches are probably the best choice for you when you read EDC. I agree with myself every day a little bit more. And in fact, I find myself looking for new watches and kind of thinking to myself, damn it, stop making mechanicals. All of these neat designs are mechanical. Do it in quartz. But at the same time, most of the internet disagrees with me. This video gets a lot of trollers, a lot of haters. A whole bunch of pain, almost as much as the Higo Nakami video. So I agree with myself every day more, but the internet in general agrees with me every day a little bit less. And that's entertaining and a little bit sad. But there you go. This is another video that's, wasn't strictly speaking a review. The close-up look at the Spyderco Sleesh Bowie, which is, well, a great knife. If you're not aware that I like this knife already, you're not a viewer. But I'm really proud of this video. In retrospect, looking back, at a very real level, it's a puff piece for the Sleesh Bowie, but I'm very happy with the way that it turned out. And I've had people who say to me things like, I already loved my Sleesh Bowie, but seeing all of these details presented makes me love it even more, and that's what I'm after. That's why I go into as much detail as I do, especially on the knives that I really love, because those details bring me joy, and if I can use my discerning eye, that's a jackassy thing to say, but if I can use that to help people find more love in what they're doing, well, that's a beautiful thing to me. And so, yeah, I'm very happy that I did this video, and if you own a Sleesh and you haven't seen it, you want to check it out. It's a joy. At least it was for me. This is a knife, the Thad Dauntless Mark IV. And you can, by the way, all of these reviews are online. You can just search for Dauntless Mark IV on the channel. Just type in whatever the knife's name is, plus Shabazz. You'll find it, or just ask in the comments if you'd like, if you can't understand what I'm saying, because I sound weird. Either way, this is a knife that I really am looking forward to future iterations of. It made me realize how much I like a thumb stud knife on bearings, because it had a great action. It brought me a lot of joy, even if some of the decisions, like the crud groove here, or the half G10 construction didn't bring me so much joy. I'm hoping very much that they make future versions of this that are a little bit up more my alley. And I've even, every time I see a carbon fiber one of these come up, I'm like, oh, I should do that. But then I realize I shouldn't be buying more knives. But still, this is a knife that's stuck with me a lot more than some of the other ones I've had come across the table. It's an impressive knife, very much. Gourav Neon is actually on loan to my buddies Frankie and Bud over at the Birdshot IV channel. And it's a great knife. I'm going to be doing a follow-up on it. But I'm realizing that in light of some of the rest of my collection, which are very unique pieces, very weird, very interesting and different, although I like this and it's a great functional tool, and I have at many points considered this to be a favorite knife of mine, in a lot of ways, it's not one of the knives I'm more enthusiastic about, because at the end of the day, it is fairly plain. It's got a great mechanical action. If this knife didn't have a great mechanical action, it wouldn't really bring me as much joy. But relative to something like the Tylock over here, or the, there's a Garrett Bull Miura over here, the Graham Razel, or the Norseman, which is also on loan at the moment, it's just, it doesn't have that same sort of pull on my heart because it's not as unique, it's not as different. It's another titanium frame lock flipper, and so I don't know. In a lot of ways, this one, my enthusiasm for this guy has waned, but it hasn't. It's still a spectacular knife. It's still a gem. It's still a, I don't know. So I don't even know how I feel about this guy anymore. But, you know, that's part of the reason I loaned it out, just to see, okay, do I miss it? Do I want to keep it around? It's still great mechanically, and it's still a gem, but I don't know. Stiff competition in the Shabazz knife drawer. Okay, speaking of internet hate, this video has the distinction of having the most dislikes of any video I have posted, period. More than anything Strider, more than Medford Hinderer, which has gotten a lot of hate too. This guy has got hate. Because I basically trashed this watch. This is a cheap mechanical watch. It's like $50. It was wildly inaccurate. It, you know, rattled. It was pretty ugly in a variety of ways, and as I said, and as I still believe, this kind of mechanical watch is what quartz was sent from the future to kill. But a lot of mechanical watch guys disagree with me. This is very often baby's first mechanical watch, and so people who are just getting into the mechanical watch game buy one of these and then defend it fiercely. That's okay. They're welcome to it. I don't mind people disagreeing with me, and it's a controversial opinion. Some people really value the spinny gears above things like accuracy. You know, who needs to know what time it is, really, at the end of the day? But this is a knife, this is a watch that's gotten a lot of feedback, so to speak, on the channel. And one of the common things that people have said is, well, Nick, you need to regulate it. You just take the back off of it and then, you know, turn the little levers, and then you can make it accurate. And I'm half contemplating picking another one of these up to try and do that, and see if I can turn this with some serious elbow grease into a watch that's worth a damn. I don't know that I'll be able to, and I don't even know that I'm going to do that, but it's on the table if I want more dislikes. But yeah, if any of you are curious, this is the video that gets the most hate out of any of the videos I've ever made. So that's entertaining. This video brought me a lot of joy, even if it's not that well acknowledged. This is my review of the Grandeur Ring, which is, well, it's a spectacularly bad watch. It's a $5 quartz watch from China. I enjoyed making this video more than I enjoy making a lot of videos, and so looking back at this, that brought me joy, and especially the juxtaposition between this guy and this guy. This is quartz, this is mechanical, this is like 30 times more accurate than that guy is. It's sad. Anyways, moving along. This guy right here is the HDS Systems Executive Rotary Light. This is one of the first high-end flashlights I handled, and in many ways it represents to me the privilege I have as a reviewer, and that I get to handle a lot of stuff. Initially, I was thinking to myself when I first got this sent over from my buddy Jim, you know, oh my God, it's a $300 flashlight. This must be the world's best flashlight ever. And then I actually handled it for a while, and now as I've handled more flashlights, I realized that, for instance, this little guy is another rotary light, and I actually like it way better than I did this guy, and this is about $200 less. You know, it's really, about 150, whatever. But nonetheless, it's a great example of, if you just think about price, this is certainly more durable. It's got some serious advantages to it. But if you just think about price, you're not always going to end up in the best area. And so this is a nice reminder of that for me. And it's a reminder of that privilege that I have of I've handled a lot of different things, so I can have, well, stronger opinions about it, so to speak. So anyways, I learned a lot from this review and then from looking at a bunch of flashlights afterwards, which cost a lot less and still perform in the same sort of ballpark. The Shergar F95 here is perhaps the biggest disappointment I had in 2016. Because, I got the Neon and it blew me away, absolutely. And I'd had the Hati, which also blew me away, absolutely. And then I picked this guy up figuring a full-size Shiro on bearings must be incalculably smooth. But it turns out that it was about the same in terms of action. Actually, I would say a little less than this 0452 CF here. But it cost 3 times the price. 3.5. And that's ridiculous. And so this is a knife that I owned, I tried to love, I wanted to love very much because I spent a lot of money on it. But I ended up selling, and luckily I didn't take a bath on it. But still, one of the bigger disappointments, and a good reminder that even from your higher-end brands, even the hyped sorts of things can be disappointing to you. And so I learned something from that. Spyderco Nirvana is a great knife, is a terrible knife. Terrible knife, great knife, in case you were wondering. I didn't like the blade, I loved the handle. My buddy Jim, is actually getting he got a Nirvana, he's sending it off for a regrind with the Razor's Edge. Same thing that Dr. Frunky on the YouTube did. And he said after he carries it for a little while, he's going to send it my way to check out. I've been considering doing that because this knife, this handle with a really great slicer blade, oh man, that could be stellar. So I'm really curious to see what this is going to look like. If they got rid of this blade and fixed some of those issues, this could be just incredible. So I'm optimistic that this is going to be an improvement. Also, I got a custom Recenti Nirvana, a custom Recenti, I don't think it's a Nirvana, coming on loan from my buddy Nico, and I'm looking forward to that. So keep an eye on the channel for that coming up soon. Cold Steel Broken Skull is another one of those knives like the Code 4. Actually, this is more so. This is a knife that if it weren't quite so douchey, if they, changed it away from gas station blue and removed Broken Skull, this would be a knife I'd respect it a whole lot more. And I struggled a little bit with this knife because if you look at it purely functionally speaking, it's a fine knife. It's bordering on a good one. It's not great for my personal life. But at the same time, it being from Cold Steel, who does so much ugly, and then having done so much ugly to it, I don't know. But this one, I still don't quite know where I land on this. As it is, I don't like it at all. As it could have been, this could be a really solid knife. And so these are always tough for me. And maybe I wasn't entirely fair to this guy. Maybe I should have given it more credit than I did. Maybe with you strip the blade and, get a rescale on it, it could be something more spectacular. But I don't know. This one was tough for me, and it remains a little bit tough. Every time I see it, I'm like, man, that was maybe better than I should have, better than I called it. I don't know. Never quite sure on these things. So right here is the Spyderco Rubicon, and I actually have a Spyderco Magnitude, which is in the other room at the moment, but that I'm going to be reviewing shortly, which is sort of the larger follow-up to this guy. This is another big surprise for me. Pick this up figuring, it's going to be fine. Nice enough knife, I guess. And then I loved it. It was just a great example of the knife making art, and so I'm really looking forward to spending a lot more time with the Magnitude, which is this guy's big brother, like I said, to seeing if it repeats the feat, so to speak. So looking forward to that. Okay, this little guy here is an Anthony Griffin, custom made for me, front flipper sway back. This is a knife that I ended up screwing up in that I asked for blade stock that was thicker than I should have, and so it wasn't a very good slicer. So I ended up selling this knife, but I'm actually very happy with how this review turned out. Because I've had a couple of different viewers tell me that they've picked up something by Anthony Griffin, and they're really happy with it. And that brings me a great deal of joy, because Anthony is a great maker. He was very nice to work with. He does very good work, and frankly, he does better work than some of your high-end, in-demand hot makers, especially the inexperienced ones that are out there in the world right now. And so it always brings me joy, even if this knife didn't turn out to be for me. It brings me a lot of joy for my readers to find something, viewers that is, to find something that they love as a result of it. And many of them have worked and even created front flipper swaybacks, and that's great. That makes me feel like I'm making a difference, even if this one didn't stick around in my collection. And so that's a nice follow-up from that. This is the Casio Thoreau. A lot of people ask me, Nick, what's a good inexpensive watch? And this is almost always where I send them. There were exactly two things wrong with this watch. The one is that it's a little bit too big, and the other is that the lume is terrible. It doesn't really glow very well and for very long. If those two things were fixed, frankly, even if they just fixed the lume, I would be gemming this guy all day long, and I'd be sending these out to everybody. These would be the best watch on the market. And I hope Casio fixes that someday, but even as it is, it's a really solid recommendation. And a lot of people overlook this review for whatever reason. This is a watch that every time I see my, reference to it anywhere, it just brings me a little bit of joy because it is really, really good for what you're paying there. It's nice. Ringout Wave is a knife that in a lot of ways has suffered from its competition. Since I filmed this guy, I've seen and handled a lot of other higher-end sorts of knives, especially some of the high-end Chinese knives. Like, for instance, your Kaiser Flashbang right over here, or even some of the Kaiser Vanguard stuff. What else? The Beg Steelcraft Bodega. I think I'm going to touch on that one later. And every time I kind of am left feeling like, this is a fine knife. It's a good knife, probably even a great knife. But it's a little more expensive than a lot of other knives that outclass it in some ways. And so I feel less good about this than I did at the time of my initial review. It's not a huge difference, and I think it's still a fine choice. But the competition is getting much more stiff for these sorts of smaller, high-end action sorts of Chinese knives, and I think the Wave isn't going to age super well in the grand scheme of things. Oh, the Medford. This is a review it aired not too long ago, but I have come to love and hate it. At one level, I'm glad that I did it because I really do feel like this isn't a very good choice as a pocket knife. It may be okay as a pry bar or something, but this particular knife was very poorly made. There wasn't much good there, and there was a whole bunch of ugly. However, what's also ugly is that a lot of people have kind of turned this into a they're trying to start a beef or pretend that there's a big beef between me and Greg Medford. And, part of that's just joking around, and I encourage some of that joking, too. My anonymous stranger buddy was definitely prodding that along over there in Russia. But at the same time, I do want to make it very, very clear that I don't like giving negative reviews. And in fact, I would love nothing more than for Greg Medford to create a version of the Praetorian that I loved, that I thought could be a solid gem, to address some of these issues in build quality, to address some of these issues in warranty and attitude, and to just, make something that cuts a little nicer. That would bring me a lot of joy, and I would very, very gladly, give a good review of that. Whatever his politics are may be a little bit ugly to me, but at the end of the day, that's completely immaterial. And so I want to make very clear that I'm not in this to diss on Greg Medford more than I am to diss on any other knife maker. I'm dissing on this particular knife, but there's not a beef there. And I want to also point out that I am very heartened by the Medford Marauder that's sitting on my desk, which is a much more recent construction. My anonymous stranger buddy over in Russia has told me that the build quality on this guy is actually much better when you take it apart, and he's actually fixed a lot of some of the issues that were present in the Medford Praetorian here. It's still got some fundamental drawbacks and limitations, and I'm still trying to understand what the heck it even is. But at the same time, I did want to make clear that my goal here is not to have a drama, to have a beef, to have anything like that. It's, at the end of the day, it is about the knives. It's about the gear, rather than about the people. So, I don't know. Moving along. This was not an intended ordering, but it kind of works. One thing that I'm realizing I do have a very big beef with is proprietary hardware. Every time I'm seeing it, it's getting uglier and uglier. whether it's something that's not really proprietary, like the snakebite bits on this guy, or your shallow Torx bits, like some of the South African makers who use into the 5 holes. Every damn time I see it, it just feels uglier and uglier, and this is the ugliest example of it. Tony Maffioni's damn dome tri-wing screws. Everything Microtech makes uses these, and every time, I just realize it's a deal breaker for me. And I feel at some level like I'm a broken record on this, because there are a lot of knives that I'm just not interested in because they've got proprietary screws, stupid screws. Like your Wii knives. A lot of people ask me, Nick, what do you think about Wii? And my first impression, I got a review of the 605 coming out soon, but my first impression is always they're great knives made with terrible screws. What are they thinking? And I feel that way about Microtech as well. There were a bunch of things like that, and you know, I hate to be a broken record, but at the same time, this is a real problem, and it needs to stop. And somebody's got to be freaking saying this, because I just don't get how people are buying $1,000 knives that they're unable to keep in good condition. Bugs the crap out of me. But anyways, this is actually perhaps runner-up for biggest disappointment in 2016, because I loved this knife from afar, but handling it up close, lost it for me. ZT not 452. Oh, what the heck is this guy even? 562? No. 392, that's what it is. God, ZT, use real names. This guy, in my review of it, I was very like, oh, it's a shame you can never find them. They're very, very difficult to get. And then ZT made me crow by releasing like 8 new models of this in the next month or 2. And, you know, so it's almost getting to be funny. Like every other week, ZT's got a new release based on the Hinderer Eclipse platform here. The 09392 Bowie, another Warncliffe, but this one's purple and green. Wow! And so all that I said about it's kind of a shame you can't get one is completely off the table. The market has completely crashed on these guys because ZT's releasing more of them every weekend. So, yeah, that's just a quick little follow-up there. The Backway Back is a knife that in a lot of ways, I learned something from this review in that this is a knife that I very much respect in a lot of ways. The blade to the edge thing at the back is kind of ugly, but I respect the engineering that went into it. I respect the back rolling detent, even though I didn't actually bring it up in the review, which was a big oversight. Stupid, stupid, stupid. I can't believe I left that bullet point off. But anyways, this is a knife that had a lot of things done right. And that even, especially if he fixes the blade coming to the edge thing, that I could very easily recommend, that I can very easily respect. I don't get it. No part of me gets what they're going for here. What Jake Oback and I might as well be on different planets, I feel like, following his social media. But at the same time, you know, there's a lot of good here. And so this knife, I grew in understanding that even though there were parts of this that I really didn't like, and there are parts of it that I just don't understand, it's still something I can respect, and it's still something that's well done. And so, I don't know, that's kind of a weird rant there, but it's something that's neat and interesting to me. I don't like it at all, but I can respect it a fair amount. So, there you go. The Sage 5 is another thing I learned a lot from. The Spyderco Sage 5 is the Sage with the compression lock. I wrote this knife off when I first heard about it because I didn't like the Sage 1, I didn't like the Sage 2, and I didn't like the Sage 3, and they're all the same basic knife shape-wise. And so I wasn't even going to pick one of these guys up. And then a viewer offered, basically said, you know, Nick, if you buy one of these, then send it to me, I'll cover your price. Okay, great. Turns out that I love this knife, and that actually the knife was better than the sum of its parts. I know I like a compression lock, but I didn't think that the compression lock would be enough to completely change the nature of the knife that was, you know, a very ho-hum knife in the Sage 1 with a liner lock, a okay knife with the Sage 2 with a frame lock, but throw in that comp lock and the whole thing became a solid gem. And so this is another thing that really surprised me and made me realize that no, even knowing as much as I do about the game, I don't really necessarily have a good idea what I'm talking about until I've actually handled something. So this was another good surprise. Like the Quieback, which I expected just to hate and make fun of, this is a knife that I expected to not care for because it was a Sage, but it turns out I loved it. So there you go. And then one other thing I learned throughout the year here, and I am wrapping up, I swear to you, is that there are certain things that I don't care enough about them to do full reviews. I don't really understand them necessarily, and keychain tools are among them. I've done a couple of reviews. I reviewed the Spermy little keychain tool because that made me laugh, and there were opportunities for all sorts of puns there. And then I reviewed a couple of these guys, but I did these short little reviews because every time I sat down and tried to do the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly, I realized that I just don't care. And if I'm trying to do a review of something I just don't give a damn about, that's kind of sad. And so I've been feeling that way with some other pieces of gear too. Swiss Army knives, unfortunately, I'm finding that I don't give a damn. I can't do the full good, great, bad, and the ugly because there's no passion there. Lighters, to another extent. I'm trying that, but I don't smoke unless I'm on fire, so I don't really have strong opinions there. And so I'm kind of focusing my energies a little bit more towards pieces of gear that I really am passionate about, that do bring me joy, like the knives, the watches, the pens, things like that. And so you're not going to see a lot more in the way of keychain pry tool reviews on the channel because I don't give a damn. And probably also small fixed blade knives. I've got a bunch of them that I'm around here, but unfortunately I'm realizing that I don't care enough, that they just don't make enough sense in my life that I can do the reviews, and so I'm probably going to skip that. Sad, but true. Another thing that I learned is that I love doing crazy things, and the stiletto review was absolutely a crazy thing. And I'm probably going to do more crazy things in the future. Sorry if you don't like the crazy, but I have more fun with the videos that are more fun to me. A good review is great, and especially if I can review a gem, that's restorative to my soul, because I'm sharing something beautiful with the world. But especially after a bunch of ho-hum reviews like, oh, it's fine. If you like it, you might like it. If you don't like it, you're probably not going to like it. But doing something a little crazy brings me a lot of joy. I think that's why the Z Hunter is such a gem for me. But, oh God, I just called the Z Hunter a gem. I have a problem. But anyways, I'm going to try and do more crazy stuff in 2017, I suppose. And then finally, I want to answer a big question that a lot of people have about the channel, which is, Nick, what is your very favorite knife that you reviewed in 2016, the best new knife of 2016? That's going to be the Ringout Wayfarer 247. I probably should have said this at the beginning. Everyone else is asleep now. But nonetheless, this is a great knife. It's the best new thing in 2016 that I'm aware of. It just blows me away in terms of build quality, and I find myself recommending it very, very regularly. Just incredible, incredible knife. I'm going to get my hands on the Swick, which is one of their brand new things, and I'm talking with the Olamic folks about some other things as well. So, anyways, keep an eye out for more Olamic from me, but that's the winner for 2016, I suppose. Let me know in the comments if you found this useful. Let me know what you'd like to see done differently in reviews in 2017. What bugs you, what doesn't. No guarantees. I might just disregard you entirely. But it's been helpful for me to hear these things in the past, and it's one of the ways in which I can grow as I go into the new year. Sorry for the length on this guy. I hope it's been interesting to you, and mostly, though, that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of the day, and keep an eye out for a couple of more end of 2016, beginning of 2017 sorts of videos. Bye, everybody.